Stephanie Blunt, it's so good to see you. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I'm pumped.
Yeah. Okay. So for the listener, give us a little bit of background on the Blunt family, who you are. We were talking a little bit off air. It sounds like you have a lot going on in your home, but let's hear about your family.
Yeah, so my husband Jonathan and I have been married for going on 9 years next month, which is exciting. We have four kiddos. They're all girls. Got like the little woman cast up in here. So my eldest, she will be 6 next week. Then I have a 4.5-year-old, and the half is very important. Uh, and then a 3-year-old. She will correct me if I miss that half. Um, And then our youngest, Sparrow, is 10 months. And so she's the baby of the crew. But
Oh,
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of energy, but we love it. It's a lot of fun. So, um,
a- and you said Sparrow is becoming very opinionated. Is that correct?
yes. Yeah, I mean, they're all very strong-willed, but she's very strong-willed at 10 months. She has a very strong opinion about things, especially car rides right now. So, yeah, and in food, and it's like she will have no qualms about grabbing food from your hand while you're trying to eat. Like she's like, no, thank you, that's mine, and she'll just grab it. So, um, and I feel like today she just like pulled the stand for the first time. So I'm like, all right, here we go. It's gonna
Oh
be
boy.
another adventure, but we have a lot of fun. We homeschool. We try to be really intentional about being outdoors.
Hmm,
We have a lot of fun family rhythms. Um, I don't
that's
know.
great.
We're kind of really eclectic, but I feel like we also have a lot of fun together as a family, and so really thankful. We're originally from Canada,
Hmm.
north of Toronto, but right now in this season we're here in Florida, which has been so nice during the winter. I just want to say, I'm sorry, all the Canadians out there. I'm just enjoying the sunshine right now, so I'm very
You know, I did. Let's see, a couple winters ago, we went down to Florida to visit my wife's family, and I really got it. Like I understood the snowbirds. Like it makes perfect sense. Like why would you not want to be in that environment? So I can totally understand what you're doing there.
right. And the thing that gets me is that like we all call them the Canadian geese, but the Canadian geese leave Canada during the winter. Okay, they migrate. So can we just say that? Like,
Right.
I don't
That's
know.
right.
People give me flack for being here, and I'm like, how about the geese? The geese live all during the winter.
uh,
Anyways, that's all I
I
have to say.
love that. I like how I'm trying to connect. Like you got Sparrow and she's a goose. I'm the Canadian goose Sparrow. So I haven't quite
Yes.
developed that one there, but there's something there. All right. So I want to hear a little bit about, and you have, 6 years old down to 10 months. And inevitably, all of us struggle with this when our phone gets in the way of an important moment, or just kind of we're kind of cognizant of the ways that this is kind of getting our way. Do you have any stories that come to mind of when you realized your phone was just kind of getting in the way of what was most important to you?
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, there's so many, but I think the point where I really was just very aware of it was after Eleanor was born. So um, she's our eldest. Kind of around the time she was about 6 months or so, maybe even a little earlier. Um, I was a new mom, and then Instagram kind of was this big thing that had kind of erupted, and I just realized, I mean, I had been on it for a little bit before that point, but I just realized how much of my time it was consuming. And
Mm,
so I think that was my first indication was um, it was almost like an escapism in the middle of like postpartum anxiety and just, you know, kind of being overwhelmed by motherhood. And um, it was a really hard season. And I think that was my escape was
mm,
being on there and feeling connection and community that I kind of felt was lacking in that season. But I think what was a turning point for me was when I felt like I was struggling with like resentment because I would be trying to finish something, finish a
mm.
post, finish something, and then there would be like an interruption, which there inevitably is if you have any children ever. There's always interruptions. So I think that was just like a heart check for me. Like, why am I feeling this way? My child is not like she's interrupting me from something that's not as important as she is. You know, like
Mm,
social media, our phones are not as important as our children, but sometimes when we are interrupted while we're on our phones, that is the response that I had did not reflect that.
mm.
I think, and it's still, if I'm honest, sometimes it still does, it still doesn't. And so that's something I have to continually check. Um, you know, being intentional about my phone usage. But I think during that season, it was when I was like, okay, things have to change. And so I
Mm,
started trying to put boundaries on my social media, kind of tried to do, some breaks during the day, only take it out while she was napping or different things like that. And then honestly, I really struggled with keeping social media um, in specific boundaries. And so eventually, I think it was 2021, December 2021, kind of after, I don't know, the first year of all the COVID stuff, or maybe the second year, I guess, at this point. Um, I had just heard a podcast challenge about going away from Instagram for a month.
mm,
And so I was like, all right, we'll do it in December. That was my last post. And then I kind of dropped it for 2022. And then after January, I didn't want to come back. It
mm,
was almost this dread of feeling like I had this freedom. I didn't feel like I had to, um, I don't know, have all this together, all this stuff together to post. And, um, I don't know, it felt very strange. I can't really explain it, but there was
mm.
just a lightness that I had felt, and I just didn't want to go back to it. So I just didn't.
Wow.
But I was like, I still want to document our family in an intentional way.
Mm.
So I started a newsletter, like a family newsletter. So
Oh,
that's what we
wow.
do. Yeah, my husband and I, instead of neither of us really use social media, but I'd say outside of he uses LinkedIn for work occasionally, but um, we have a newsletter that we put out like every month or every month and a half or so, and so that's what we do. I write it all, so it's I try to kind of create a narrative of our stories, and then I
Mm.
use pictures, and so takes a lot of my time,
Yeah.
honestly, but I feel like it has given me that piece of I
Mm.
want to document our family. I want to remember all these things which social media gave, and I want to keep people updated in a way that I can kind of control it.
Mm.
Yes, that's what I do.
That, I want to go back. I want to hear a little bit about the newsletter. I have some questions on that, but I want to go back to the feeling you mentioned of resentment towards your kids. And this is something that we have heard. This is an encouragement to you and people listening. We've heard that concept again and again and again of this like very great moms, intentional moms, like wonderful moms who have said that, who have had the courage to admit that I was feeling resentful towards my kids, and then almost describing it's like when you feel that resentment, it's almost like you feel bad about that also, and so it kind of goes down this kind of perpetual shame spiral to some degree. Can you relate to that? What was that feeling like of feeling that resentment and then realizing, well, I shouldn't resent an infant, but then I do? But do you know what I mean? Like, what is that like for a mom?
I mean, I think for me specifically, it like it was coming out of a place of distraction and then being pulled in and then just that tension. I mean, I think as a mom, um your time just changes. All of a sudden,
Mm,
it's like you are no longer able to do something start to finish. So I think there's a lot of things that you can be interrupted from and kind of feel a little um, resentful or a little like, oh man, I just wish I could finish one thing, like
yeah,
anything really. But I think with technology, with phones, they have like an added like lure almost where it makes it harder to step away, to put down. um, you know uh, it's way easier to put down, I don't know, like a magazine or a book or something than it is to put down a phone for some
yeah,
reason. And this is researched. I'm not coming up with this myself, but there's something about a phone that maybe it's the new amount of information that is going to be coming, or I don't know, whatever it is, but it's harder. And so I think for me, I would struggle with that and I would feel bad, but I also felt kind of trapped in,
mm,
again, with my lack of boundaries, of knowing how to do it. And so that's when I started trying to put the boundaries in.
yeah,
But I think, yeah, again, I'd say for me, the biggest thing too was I didn't feel like I was able to be present
mm,
with, um, being on my phone, documenting all the time. I mean, it still always is a struggle. And so I think that's why
yeah,
I really appreciate Aro of having something that encourages you to, have boundaries, in physical boundaries, not just boundaries that, you set yourself. They're great, but just having that extra layer. Accountability is super super helpful.
and then you had to find And very often, by the way, you mentioned this. You said you picked up your phone to connect with others, which makes total sense. That's an isolating period of time for a young mom. So, did you have to go then find more intentional ways to go get connection apart from your phone?
Yes, I did. I think, to be honest, I started doing these kind of groups. So it was initially on social media. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing like Facebook groups and things like that to try to create, like a crafting crew or different things. But I think I realized that the kinds of relationships that I was creating on social media were very much like a puddle depth of a
Mm,
relationship.
yeah.
And what I really was craving um, was kind of like, waist deep, knee deep relationships with other people in my life. And so, honestly, something I struggled with when I was on social media was something called compassion fatigue. I don't know if
Mm,
you've ever heard of that, but it's just like there's so much going on in all these people's lives that are in your circle. It's like,
mm.
and for you to care for each one of them, like that is impossible. It actually drains you, so you can't care for the own people in your own life, like in your own
Wow.
home, And so I think I was just getting to a place where I was carrying all of these people's things, and they were all like in my direct life. They were just in my social media feed,
Right.
And then the people that were in my like my best friends in my real life, or like my husband or my kids in my real life, I didn't have the capacity to extend compassion and care for them because I was already getting spent up. And so
Mm,
I think for me, that's another thing that I felt like relief when I stepped off social media. It was like, I'm going to invest in the people in my like real life, in my real circle. I'm not saying that everyone has to be right in the same city or country that I'm in. I think I can still have intentional connections with people across the world. And I do. I have, one of my best friends is in Australia. I still connect with her, but I don't do it through social media. We do it through, writing each other letters or calls or text messages, but it's not the same thing as, just seeing her on my feed and me commenting on her
mm.
pictures. And so I think it's just a difference of relationship. And so I think once I experienced that, knee deep, waist deep relationship, I realized I didn't really want the puddle
Yeah.
relationship anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love the concept of the family newsletter, because it requires you to take a lot of time. It's very intentional, where you're having some real time to reflect on what's happened. So I really love that concept a bunch. I'm gonna have to get on the mailing list here. Um,
Sure.
I'm curious. So you were already taking intentional steps, getting off social media, and so I'm curious. How did you intersect with RO, and then why was it? What was it about that where you said, and I think I'd like to bring this into our home?
So I think I heard about Aro on a podcast with Justin Whitmore early. I believe he
Hmm.
was on the 1000 Hours Outside podcast, which is one I follow. And he talked about it. And I thought that was such a great concept of kind of creating rhythms of habits around technology. In his books, he talks about different habits of the household. And he has a lot of really, great ones that kind of align with intentionality and family dinners and things like that. So that book was really, honestly, life changing for
Yeah.
us. Like I think there's a lot of things that like there's a lot of intentions that we had, but I think kind of naming it like we want this to be solid in our home. It's like, okay, because we said it out loud, we're going to actually make sure that we're like really intentional about it, and it's not just going to be like, okay, this is just going to happen. It's like we want to make sure this is part of our culture
Yeah.
in our home. And so um, that's when I first heard about it. And then being in Canada, I was like, let me just see if I can work, if we can get it. But it wasn't. It was like, nope, not yet. So I was like, all right, I gotta be patient. But until you're here in the season, so I was like, okay, since we're in Florida, I guess might be the time to get it. Um, but yeah, I really like
Mm,
the idea of it, and I really like the way that you have paired it also up with. It's not just about it's not just about a box, but it's really
yeah.
about um, intentionality and trying to create these rhythms. And the box is there to help you. Like it's a tool, just like your phone is a tool, but helping you put that tool in its right place and use it at the right times and not let it um, detract from your life.
Yeah.
I think is huge. And so I really appreciate
Mm,
that. So we've
yeah.
been using it for the last I think since March, so it hasn't been very long, but
Right.
I got it for Valentine's Day for my husband,
Oh, how
and so
about
we've
that?
kind of been using it since then. But we really really appreciate it, and we really have just seen kind of that language of like, okay, let's have some RO time, or let's just have some intentional time, or we do have those rhythms, but kind of having a place where we know this is where our
Mm.
phone could be, even though we don't usually have our phones at the table, but like let's put them here, because I think what has struck me is that even though our kids are so small, they are watching.
Oh yeah.
Like they're very aware of technology. My 10-month-old, like I mentioned, literally picked up an AirPod off my carpet floor, and rather than putting it in her mouth, which is she puts everything in her mouth, put it in her ear,
Oh
which
wow.
blew my mind. I was like, she knows what an AirPod is. She knows it belongs in your ear. Like these kids are literally watching us, and we are not aware of how much they can take in. So at 10 months, she already knows that piece of technology goes in this. This
Oh
is how
my
you use it.
gosh. That
So
is fascinating. I mean, that is amazing. That's so true. They're just little sponges. They're just soaking up every bit of information. And we talk about this a bunch. Like, what are we normalizing for them? What's normal for them? And I love how you said you don't have phones at the dinner table and all that kind of stuff. So, what would be? Has there been a moment, or and you've alluded to kind of some of that, but over the last couple of months, as you've been using RO, has there been a moment, has there been something that you've noticed, whether it's in your family dynamic or a very specific point in time, that you've said, hey, this looks a little bit different than it did before?
So I think honestly, it has, especially after the kids go to sleep. My husband and I have, a more awareness of like, hey, we
Mm.
want to have our phones off. We usually do kind of a check in after the kids are asleep, but I think it's been easier during longer, bedtime sessions. Which unfortunately there are those days where bedtime takes a very long time, especially our three girls sleep in the same room, so it only takes one of them to set off the other one.
Of course.
Usually they do really well, but there are those days on those, those weeks where the something is off, like daylight savings. Who knows? Something is off and it goes crazy, and you're like, oh man, okay, I just need to, catch up on this stuff. But I think those moments where it's
Mm.
reminding us that we do need to connect, and just having the language. But I think what I appreciate with RO and just having that, like again, it's like having that intention of I want to be present, I want to put my phone away. It's made me more aware of when I have my phone out, when I'm using it, when I'm recording something, even I'm like, do I need to be recording
Mm.
this? Or can I just be present, and watch and kind of remember it? Like, do I need to constantly be documenting? I think it's just kind of giving me um, this check, which is so helpful, and even a greater awareness. A lot of people are saying like, well, now I'm noticing, you know, people with their phones out. I think for me, I'm noticing myself. I'm noticing
Mm.
my kids and how like they're, like I said, 3, 4, and 5, but they're playing, and sometimes they'll have like a fake phone in their pockets. Like they'll take some kind of thing, like a walkie-talkie or something, and they'll put it in their pocket and they'll walk around playing house with their phone. And I'm like, oh man, is that me? Like, are they,
Mm.
have they seen me with my phone all the time? And now this is what they're replicating. And so I think it's given me that greater awareness. We have talked to them about this is where our phone goes. Like you can put Mama's phone in the box. But I think for them right now, the biggest thing I can do is to continue learning to use it
Mm.
and have that boundary for myself, because they are aware. We're really good with things like television. Like in Canada, we actually don't have a television in our house, and that was a very intentional thing that we did. And so they know there is time to watch a movie, but we watch, usually on a screen on our computer. Um, Here, we have my parents' TV that we can turn on, and they can,
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to put on a video, but it's very intentional. Like it's not around all the time. It's not on all the time. We literally have to set it up with a video, a DVD in DVD, player. Old school, I know, but like we have to set it up for them to watch something. And so I think that's kind of what I wanted to be like with our phones. Like I'm not saying I don't want to not never have a phone up, but I'm saying I want to be able to have its special times, intentional times for when it's being used and enjoyed, and not be in the background.
Yeah.
Like, people could have a TV in the background.
Yeah. No, I love that. I was thinking for the last question, I'm going to kind of adapt. I prepped you with this question on some encouragement or advice for other families, other parents, but I would love if you can think about the young mom. I want to think about you back to yourself when you had a 6 month old and the feeling of, the postpartum anxiety. Am I doing this right? dealing with these feelings of I really want to connect. That happens on my phone, but maybe feeling a little bit shameful and you're ignoring your kid. Just all those feelings happening all around you. What would you say? Maybe a mom right now is listening who was in your spot. I'm curious, what kind of encouragement or advice would you give to that mom?
Yeah, I think my biggest encouragement, like if I could go back and speak to myself
Mm,
in that season, I would say, reach out to a person, a
mm,
mom, and connect with them. Try to do it face to face. It's okay if it's imperfect. It's okay if you're going to get interrupted and you have to feed and it's messy. Like, it's okay. But the importance of being there face to face, because honestly, for me, once I started doing that, it was actually another mom who identified that I had postpartum anxiety. I couldn't see it myself,
wow. Mm,
but it was a mom friend of mine who said, "Hey, Steph, some of the things that you're saying, like they sound like you're struggling with something. I think you could have this. I think you could have postpartum anxiety." And I honestly had never even heard of postpartum anxiety at the
wow.
point. I'd heard of postpartum depression, which I was like, I don't think I'm struggling with that. But I had never really heard about that because I wasn't someone who was naturally anxious until I became a mother, and then I was really struggling with it.
Mm,
So it was just really interesting to me. But having those people in your real life, they can help you so much more. And so I think, if I was going to go back, I would say keep pressing into those things. They are harder, but they are worth it.
mm,
And then also like um, take in the moments with your kiddos. I know everyone tells you like they grow up so fast and all that stuff, but I think what I would say is, hard is not the same thing as bad.
mm,
That because your season of motherhood is hard does not mean that it's bad, does not mean that you were doing a bad job. It just means that you are going through motherhood, and motherhood is a very hard and challenging and beautiful and
mm,
refining process where you grow. And anything any my kiddos are all very into nature. Well, if you look at a butterfly and the whole process of metamorphosis, for the butterfly to go into the chrysalids, and to become a butterfly, it's a very grueling process. And for change to happen, there has to be pain and tension and struggle. Like,
yeah.
but the beauty comes out of that. Like, becoming a mother is such a beautiful thing, when you press into the heart and say, I'm going to be present even in the heart. I'm not going to escape, and I'm going to seek to connect with other moms in my real life and take chances. Like, ask the mom to go on a play date, put yourself out there, go first, be vulnerable. I think all those things, just have helped me, connect with my best mom friends that I have in my life now, and they wouldn't have been there if I wasn't willing to put myself out there, and do those things in real life.
Wow. I feel like somebody needed to hear that. I think that message, just you're not alone. Take some chances. I love that hard is not the same thing as bad. What a great encouragement, Stephanie. Thank you for giving us your wisdom, your experience, your encouragement, advice. I think there are a lot of people who needed to hear that, and I'm thankful for you. Get encouragement is just giving courage. Thank you for giving courage to other people listening out there. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you.